We've been talking a lot about conversation, about dialogue, about people, and this last talk this morning is about communities of practice, something which is very dear to me for a long time. And I was recently asked by Cabling to come for a visit, and they are really worried because of the bad results from the project team, something that I mentioned to you earlier. And what they decided was that Anne McClear from Comms, James McMahon from HR, and Louise McKeek, the CIO, they were tasked with improving the knowledge sharing and the communication between the engineers at Cabling. Because as I pointed out earlier, they realized that the problem that the team had was not necessarily that because engineers didn't have the tools, were badly managed, was just that when they were outside working directly with the client, they could not tap into the vast amount of knowledge that already existed in the company, especially within the most senior colleagues. So they had this problem that they had to address, or this idea that they needed to improve knowledge and knowledge sharing and communication. And when I met with them, Anne McClear told me something that she had noticed, which was that, and James has already alluded to that, they realized at some point that there was a group of junior engineers meeting in the cafeteria once a week. And they seemed all very engaged and very talkative. They would have their lunch and talk with each other. And Anne McClear realized that what they were doing was they were sharing knowledge, and they were sharing their issues with the most problematic projects they had in hand. And they were all the junior engineers, and they decided, okay, if we cannot tap into the knowledge of the most senior ones, we'll just share our doubts and our questions with each other. And I saw that as an opportunity, because these guys effectively were already a community of practice, and that's what I shared with Anne McClear. And Anne asked me, okay, so what do I do? Do I recognize them as a community of practice? Do I support them in any way? Should we just let them be and do whatever? And these are the kind of the practical ideas or suggestions I offered to Anne McClear. One of them was to approach them and say, look, we know what you're doing. We understand the reasons why you're doing it. We are here to help you if you want. So if you want to have time to meet outside the cafeteria, maybe we can find that for you. If you need a tool to help you discuss when you're engaged in a project assignment and you cannot be at the cafeteria, we can do that for you as well. The important thing here was that that community of practice was all of a sudden something that was not just recognized as valuable by the junior engineers, but was also seen as a solution by the senior team because it could help them achieve a goal. However, the offer needs to be suggested and not imposed, because we've discussed this morning already. If you ask people, if you mandate people to do something, usually their reaction is, oh, I don't want that. So we need to give them space, but we also need to make them feel comfortable on taking their steps. However, there could be a reason for making it a formal thing. And in fact, the members can see a need in that. Because let's assume that these guys, these junior engineers, meet to discuss these really hard projects, but they still find that it's hard to benefit from the knowledge that the more senior ones. Maybe they really would appreciate making this a formal community and the organization supporting them and making it a formal community. So one thing I suggested to Anne is that maybe they could do some sort of an analysis, a mapping. This is something that's usually called a social network analysis, which is nothing to do with the social media and social networks as we usually tend to think of them today. So it's nothing to do with Facebook or whatever. It has to do with understanding the pattern of activity and interaction between people inside the organization. So Anne McClear led this effort, and they created this mapping of relationships. And this is a map that represents the answer to a simple question: is who do you go to for information on a tricky project? And what we can see here is the junior engineers right at the bottom. They get in touch with each other. They ask questions to each other. But then you look at the most senior ones at the top, and they don't really talk to each other. The senior ones don't talk to the junior ones. However, you see that lady over, right in the middle, the one with the glasses, she's Yasmin. She's the PA to the management board. What happens at Cabelink is that when you have these junior engineers who have a problem to solve and they want to know who has done that before, all they can do is to ask Yasmin. She's the connector. She's the networker, if you want. She creates the bridge between the junior engineers to the more senior ones. However, Yasmin, she's a PA, she's an administrative person, and she's fully engaged with booking meetings. Come on. That's what they do, isn't it? Unfortunately, they spend their time booking meetings and doing that stuff. And this cannot happen. This is not the way to do it. Either she needs to have a different place in the organization, or she needs to be freed to do the things that are expected of her. And the other thing is, Sam McCable, the guy, the smiley guy with a white beard at the top, is the manager of the overall team. And now they're aggregating the team of these guys, Steve McGreasy, and it doesn't look like a happy chap, does he? He's really kind of, Sam McCable has introduced a tool that Femke has already mentioned. They're trying to communicate better using an online tool, but Steve McGreasy is not playing along. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And that means that when his team comes on board, Sam and Steve will be the only connecting point between these two teams. And obviously, if they were put together by the board, it's because they are meant to be talking together and working together. So this is a problem, or an opportunity, and that this could be a reason for making the community a formal one. The other thing is, it's important to assess the impact these communities are having, especially if they're formal communities. And mostly it's not to be charging results from them, because these communities should not have a result to achieve. The purpose for these communities is for people to learn with each other, and that's enough as it is. And it's for people to communicate better with each other. However, and again, it was pointed out earlier today, it's important that we show the organization that indeed these people are talking more with each other because they belong to the community. This is a recognition of the work they're doing and the impact of the community for the organization. And I mentioned this, offer space. It's time space and digital space and physical space. There's lots of examples where digital space can be created for these communities to exist. There's also lots of examples of where physical space was created for people to have a space to sit and talk. Another thing that's going on at Cabelink is that Anne McClear, she thinking that it would be great to have a social intranet, a social collaboration platform, and she doesn't really know how to make it being used by other people. So I said that maybe the idea of communities of practice that we discussed for the other topic could be put in place to help people get on board with the new intranet. And the idea here was to use Sam McCable's experience. As I mentioned, he's already using a tool that he identified himself and created for or installed for his own team. So the idea was to use Sam McCable with all his energy and identify other people in the organization who could be as passionate as he is about these topics and engage them as a community. And again, it's about making the objectives clear, but the objectives is not for that group of people. That community has to deliver an adoption rate for the intranet of 90%. That's not the purpose. The purpose is for them to feel empowered, to create, to think creatively about new uses for the intranet, for them to feel comfortable using the intranet, for them to feel comfortable making something happen and feeling fulfilled as a result. Those should be, the objectives should be along those lines. Identify people interested in the topic, as I mentioned. That, again, could be done with a social network analysis. You could use that to identify people For instance, there was an exercise, I think the first time I heard about social network analysis was talking to a colleague of mine at the NHS in the UK. And the guy said to me that they had done social network exercises and there were 4 people that did not belong to the same department, and they were talking like crazy and creating a really strong connection between different teams. And he just couldn't understand because it didn't make any sense. The profiles were completely different. So he went to talk to them, as you do, as you should do, and he realized they were the smokers. So people, the connectors sometimes are just not the people you expect. So passionate people about the topic may be that they were doing a thesis on their previous life about the topic. It could be that they are planning on moving jobs and they really want to position or create a future in a different job for themselves. So it's all about understanding people's motivations and bringing them together. And the other thing is being there for them. If they see the community as a place for them to learn, and again, that should be the main goal of a community, you need to provide them the tools for learning. It could be the space, as I mentioned. It could be giving them material, giving them ideas, bringing people in to talk to them and motivate them and engage them around the topic. And finally, I think it's finally, communicate. Communicate with them a lot about what they can do, about how happy you are as an organization with what they're doing, but also communicate to the rest of the organization that this community exists, that this community is doing stuff, that this community is creating value, and everyone in the community is engaged and learning as a result. Because this will motivate others to join this community or other communities in the future. Oh, and the other thing is collect stories. Whenever possible, communicate by telling the stories of what they're doing internally in the community. So if they are meeting at the cafeteria, ask them to tell us about something that happened in their last meeting. Ask us to tell the impact that one nugget of knowledge that has been shared has created in terms of the project they're working on. Because these are the stories that will motivate them, that will cement their closeness as a community, but these are also the stories that will convince the rest of the organization to promote and put some investment in time and dedication to these sort of communities. So these are my tips for cabling. I hope they're useful for you as well.